good morning, good afternoon, and good evening from wherever you are. This is another episode of Voices for Excellence. I am your host, Dr. Michael Connor, CEO and founder of the Agile Evolutionary Group. And it is with extreme honor that we have today's guest. Today's guest is the face of ALAS. Yes, she is the face of the Association of Latino Administrators and Superintendents, former superintendent herself. She has held every single position in the education ecosystem, and it is my utmost honor to have Dr. Maria Armstrong on Voices for Excellence. Dr. Armstrong, Hermana, how are you?
Wow, I'm so uplifted right now with that kind of an intro. I think I need to carry you around for everything.
Dr. Armstrong, you know you are one of the most impactful educators out there in the country. Your voice just carries a lot of weight. A lot of superintendents, both aspiring superintendents and veteran superintendents, look up to you. So the work that you're doing is just extremely extraordinary, Dr. Armstrong. And thank you just for being a sister in this ecosystem.
Well, I'm obviously very excited to be here. I'm humbled that you placed me in that category because, we all have those folks that we hold in such high esteem. Now, I do want to lead off with the fact that I'm not sitting here with these shades on, Michael, because I think I'm too cool for school. I actually have some medicine on my eyes, so I didn't want to leave you hanging on this podcast. But we do what we got to do, right? Because the work is just that. And so, all vanity aside, I just wanted to ease, my face and your eyes.
Listen, I tell you, Dr. Armstrong, on Voices for Excellence, it's okay to get your Mary J. Blige on. So it's all right, Dr. Armstrong, be you, man. The vitality of the intellect and the strategies that supersedes anything of how we're portrayed on camera. So it doesn't matter. But I hope all is well with your sister. Now let's get right into the interview because they don't want to hear me talk. They want to hear you. They want to hear your knowledge. They want to hear your expertise. But this first question is a fun question, and I can't wait for you to answer it. Okay. So we all know Dr. Maria Armstrong, the face of ALAS, representing the organization across the country and internationally beyond. But when education leaders, business organizations, education entities, investors, partners, stakeholders, even families within the ecosystem, when they first encounter Dr. Maria Armstrong, what is the equity song that comes to mind when they first see your appearance, right? What song defines equity and justice in the context of Dr. Maria Armstrong? Because here, Dr. Armstrong, my equity song, and it makes everybody laugh. Super Bad by James Brown, right? And that intro when it comes in. So, but what's your song, Dr. Armstrong?
Wow, my song. The one that comes to mind, and the reason why it does is because it's almost a ritual with me because I use it when I work out. It starts my day, and that's a song. It's called My Fight Song, and it's by Rachel Platt. So there's a line in that song where, this is my fight song. I take back my life song. And the purpose of that is because I do believe that, and even if, I think it goes something like, and I don't really care if nobody else believes, because it's still, I know I've got still a lot of fight in me. And the reason that I think it's not just my personal song that comes to mind for that, but it really does set the tone for when I first joined the Association of Latino Administrators and Superintendents. I remember making a speech at the AASA Effie Jones Award luncheon, and what I said was basically that ALAS is a sleeping giant, but we are asleep no more. Yeah. And so, and I do believe that because we've grown so much in an organization in such a short amount of time, because of the variables that we'll talk about, I'm sure, within the show here today. But yeah, that's the one that comes to mind. This is my fight song, and there's still a lot of fight left in us, and we've been doing this for a long time. Pre, during, and post. So yeah, that's what comes to mind.
Absolutely, Dr. Armstrong. And when you think about that, right, there's a lot of fight left in us. And I think when we look at education now, how politicized it is, the polarization that superintendents and executive leaders are facing across the country, we have to have a lot of fight in us. But now that fight has become more strategic where we're a coalition. And when I think about that coalescing of this coalition around that fight, ALAS is leading that across the country. And as we get into the second question, right, there are a lot of great initiatives that are coming out of ALAS. Dr. Armstrong, under your leadership, I can tell you this, from looking from afar, right, what you're doing is extraordinary, right? Advocacy initiatives. When you talk about the seal that you're developing, that's going to be presented to the United States Department of Education, your strategic partnerships, leadership development programs on a multitude of different tiers. All of this is coming out of the work of ALAS in Washington, right? So you're building on a lot of new and legacy programs right now in ALAS, but what's the next step, right? I know you have, just from you being an innovative superintendent and innovative leader, I know that, yes, it's in a great place right now, but you want to keep on explaining it to continue that trajectory of greatness, right? So what does ALAS have in store for the next year and beyond?
Yeah, bigger, brighter, and stronger is kind of the theme that comes to mind. But you spoke about the advocacy piece, and I think that's one where it's not by accident that we are headquartered out of DC, and so the advocacy has always been a pillar of ALAS, to be able to be that voice from a grassroots level to the Senate steps level, where our historically marginalized youth, Black, Brown, students with disabilities, low socioeconomics, we cover a lot of the boxes, right? There is no singular anything when it comes to the diversity within the culture of Latino, Afro-Latino. We're a solid, mix, if you will, and it's that juxtaposition that I think that makes us so rich and diverse in being able to be that advocate, that voice in so many of these areas, because no one child, like, we know, comes with just a face value. There's so much more that they bring to us. And so I think that from the advocacy standpoint, you'll see ALAS come out more often. We've actually added this year, for the first time, we are having a superintendents only gathering, which is going to happen next week, as a matter of fact, in DC. And we have superintendents from all over the U.S. that are ALAS members and also NABSE members, and others who are not a part of either one of our organizations. And the reason for that is because we want them to see firsthand what those initiatives are that are aligned between ALAS and NABSE. And so the National Alliance for Black Educators, NABSE, the executive director at TIBA, Dr. Atiba Weza, and I, we have been working to coordinate this first time ever superintendent gathering on next week. So that's that's something that we've added to our annual legislative on the Hill Day. ALAS has had that for quite some time. And so what we've done with that is we now have, there's always some evolutionary steps that happen with any program or component of the organization. And one of the things that we have been able to evolve to is that in the past, it was perhaps some state affiliate leaders, along with our SLA, our Superintendent Leadership Academy, and they would gather, and connect with their local representative on the Hill. this year what we're seeing is we have a network, an actual affinity committee that is comprised of not just our state affiliate reps, but the state members themselves. And so we have what's called the Policy Advocacy Affinity Committee. And in that, they have been working all year long to be able to bring to the table what are the initiatives that we should be looking at, because there's always some, things that pop up that we didn't see coming around the bend. And so we want to make sure that we are in tune with what's happening at the local level as well, as it progresses to the federal level and vice versa, because there are some initiatives that come out of the House floor that we, say, hey, where did that come from? And now we've got to react. So rather being reactive, we're trying to really be in that proactive state where these voices from our state affiliate membership are also included in this annual gathering that we host. So from policy advocacy, that's kind of the difference, or where we see us going, is to be a little bit more active in that stance rather than just the annual. The other, you mentioned, our legacy programs, and I mentioned the Superintendents Leadership Academy, or SLA. That has been ALAS's signature program for quite some time. We are just wrapping up our 12th cohort. And so for the last 12 years, we've been able to produce some amazing leaders. In 2020, as a matter of fact, when I first came on board, I was so just blown away by the fact that of the 5, largest districts in the nation, 4 of those were held by positions of leadership, chancellor, and so forth by graduates of the SLA program. So that's that's one that has been mimicked, or at least tried to have been mimicked by other organizations now, which is awesome because we can't do it all. There are a whole lot more of us, and so we appreciate the fact that others are using us as a guidepost and a light to be able to spawn off their own versions of that, so that we can get that representation out there. Because for too long, the leadership that has served our kids across the board, as you know, may have not been very representative. And it's not just a matter of color, or it's a matter of experience, color, and all those variables that I mentioned before that provide a different kind of lens for folks to be able to bring the best that they can to kids. And so we'll pride ourselves on the fact that we're not saying that you have to be Latino to be a part of ALAS. Right. What we're saying is we have an organization that is filled with experiences, knowledge, expertise, and background. Those pieces that come from what we've all endeavored during our time in public education. And as now stewards of that, we want to share with others what is working best with our kids and what could work better for our kids, because there are so many cultural differences that you can't use a broad brush stroke on, a Colombiano versus a Mexicano. There are nuances within our culture that we are so blessed to have so many representatives within our organization to be able to share those nuances. So then that way, everybody has as much information as possible to best serve all kids.
Yeah. And I tell you, and with my audience, please at some point rewind that answer, right? And when we talk about Dr. Armstrong, I always love to reference Hattie's work with the effect size 0.6 of direct instruction. This is an asynchronous alignment of direct instruction. So please, what you just heard was a lot, right? Not only explicitly, you want to join the organization of ALAS because of the amazing work that's going on, but there were critical elements or critical touch points that Dr. Armstrong talked about, specifically around the advocating of policy change, legislative change with the marginalized subgroups, or I should say student groups, that we have within our education ecosystem. The intentionality that Dr. Armstrong presented around NAPC and ALAS collaboration, that is critical, because when we think about the representation of public education, 50% of public education students are Black and Brown. So this type of strategic collaboration is needed because the representation or the demographics of our student groups are mainly Black and Brown. So, Dr. Armstrong, thank you for that, because one of the critical points, right? And I just want to highlight, this is kind of like a variant that you said, is there are various nuances within the Latino culture where same thing with Black, right? Jamaican is very different from an African American versus very different from a Nigerian. But the common misnomer is that they categorize Black as one category. Same thing with Latino. So when we think about that, right, and start unwrapping that, you touched upon a great theme that I think needs to be embedded within public education or education totality: metabolizing culturally responsive systems, ensuring that being culturally responsive in our classrooms is a consistency, right? Because now with the levels of differentiation, we have to take into consideration the multiple cultures that represent our ecosystem. But Dr. Armstrong, how now, you touched upon it, right? How do leaders start engaging into that level or that depth and breadth of being culturally responsive in our classrooms and in our districts?
Well, I mean, there's so many different opportunities that I know. Part of what ALAS is all about is listening. Listening to what is needed out there, and then looking within our treasure chest, if you will, of who can provide that kind of insight, whether it's through a webinar, whether it's through conferences, like maybe a strand or workshops that will really delve deeper into areas to be able to understand better. And so one of the things that I find is that if you're listening to the folks that you serve, then the ideas will come from them as well. And so I'm just the one that's beating the drum, but everybody else around me is singing the song. And so they know what's needed out there. It's just a matter of listening. So, for example, we have various networks that really attune to the fact that we need leaders that understand policy. Let's just say that. So we have the Women's Superintendent Policy Leadership Academy, and that's run by Dr. Kishimoto, who's phenomenal, retired State Secretary of Education out of Hawaii. And so she brings a wealth of knowledge, and she hosts various seminars and programs for us. And so people can go to that to learn more about how to be a leader that is culturally responsive to not just to children, but to each other, because it starts adult learning. It's not just I get it and I'm able to transfer it. It's really being able to dig deep into your own biases and learning firsthand, so that then you can be a teacher. You can't teach what you don't know. And so that's kind of the first step and the approach that we take when we provide these different kinds of programs and or networking opportunities. We have our Leaders of Legacy. Our Leaders of Legacy are a group of mostly retired, not all of them, folks that have held positions from principalships to superintendency and everything in between. And what they do is they provide coaching and mentoring. So if you want to get seriously in-depth knowledge and understanding, we pair you up with somebody that has that track level record that will be the person that you can tap on to continue your professional growth and learning as well. And so these programs and networks are very strategic based on the listening to what is being asked of us as what is needed by them.
Yes, absolutely. And thank you, Dr. Armstrong, because very, very important. And the work that Dr. Christina Kishimoto doing is very, very important as well. And it leads into this next question, right? And this data point has really bothered me, right? And that you're the perfect person to talk about this, because I attended a session that you led out in California, CALSA. And, I spoke with, or we had a previous guest on VFE, which was Dr. Rosa Perez Isaiah, right? And we had the same discussion about these gender inequities that we see, specifically within leadership. The data that you presented, right? 4% of our superintendents today are Black and brown women. That is absolutely egregious. And I think the boards that are making these hiring decisions, where now we're seeing a trend where when women are being replaced by men, is purely malfeasance, right? Because now we're exacerbating a gender inequity, specifically around executive leadership, the superintendent role. This has bothered me, and I know you've been advocating across this nationally. Dr. Armstrong, how can we deepen this coalition to ensure that we have women representing us as leaders, and they're sitting in the chair making very, very important decisions for our kids?
Yeah, well, that's a great question, Michael. And if I had the answer to that, I'd probably be on the Today Show right now. you know, all jokes aside, it's such a large and deeply rooted question, because this didn't happen overnight. Those stats that you actually heard me share with my sisters out in California is something that it's not new, unfortunately. I mean, I think about it just from a personal level. When I was a superintendent in California, I was one of 9 in a state that's predominantly Latino.
Yeah.
And so, we share this with folks, that the stats are there because it's very deep rooted in the system that we all work in. And so it's going to take all of us in the system to get us out of that. And part of that is we're an educational system, so we should be educating each other on what this means. Like, why is it important that women are, not just women of color, but women in general, are in leadership positions? And because that's staggering as well. But then you take it a notch deeper, and it's like, now where are we with the women in color? And it is disproportionate, hugely disproportionate. 4% out of the nation. Come on.
Exactly.
And so I think about how not to jump into a history lesson, but think about how it was founded, the system was founded and set up, and who it was founded and set up for and by. Those are the pieces that you have to start to look at to say, okay, now I understand, because it was during that time, but we are no longer in that time. So now, what are the questions that we should be asking, of ourselves and of each other? How do we create this new approach to being able to say, we are not coming from a point of lack. It's not because there aren't enough Latinos or Black or, Asian or whatever other what was considered minority representation out there to lead. We have leaders in our communities all over the place. But the difference is, when it comes to our practices trump what we know we should be doing for that to evolve to where we know it needs to evolve to. And that is, we start from a place of lack. We think there are just a set number of positions, and they should go to a set number of people, when in fact, there are more positions now open than ever before. And we're still saying there's a shortage. Then you're not looking hard enough, because people, and it bothers me that I even have folks who we're in the business of being able to prepare and provide, right? And they're coming back to me and saying, we can't even get an interview. And oftentimes it's with our own folks that they're not getting an interview. Now that's even troublesome.
Dr. Armstrong, I apologize to interject. Please elaborate on that, because we're unapologetic on VFE, and let's really please just unwrap that, because I think that's very important. Where we always try to we screen for opportunities, albeit our own are shutting us out. Not even an opportunity to get to the table to even demonstrate the high levels of competencies that they have in leadership. And please, Dr. Armstrong, if you can unwrap that, because I think I've been hearing that too across the country as well.
Yeah, and that's the reason why I'm on this particular podcast is because I know it's unapologetic. And so I need to put out the disclaimer. The opinions that I share are my own at this point and not that of others.
Listen, hey, it's unapologetic, and we can separate the two because let's Hermana, let's be serious. We
Yeah.
have
So
conversations around a table, but they're not disseminated to break the system. You highlighted it. I always highlight a quote from W. Edward Deming. The system is perfectly designed to get the outcomes that it's getting. What is the outcomes we're generating, right? More men in leadership roles, more Anglo-Saxon men in leadership roles, more Black and brown women not having the same, I like to say, the same leverage as their counterparts, which means we are becoming extinct. So we need to have these conversations in order to stop, disrupt, and dismantle what the system is perfectly designed for.
yeah. So yeah, let's dive a little into the deep end here. And when I hear folks share that with me, it's not in shock and awe for me.
Hmm.
And the reason I say that is because unfortunately, I feel and I think that sometimes when one of us gets a little bit of this, we
Right.
don't want to use it.
Right.
And so again, it comes from a space within an individual of lack when there should be so much more of you are sitting in an opportunity to kick the door wide open.
Yeah.
and start offering those opportunities. Now, I can share with you, there are some superintendents that are doing just that, and I admire them for that. They are people of their word, and they also know that by doing so, they're helping create that system that we know needs to be created, right?
Absolutely.
There are others. There are others that have been also in the system, and and there's a variety of reasons, whether it's fear because the board is saying this, the
Right.
community is saying that. I can't lose my job. Hey, no, you can only do or move the needle, if you will, if you're in the position to do that. And if you're out of a job, you can't do that. So it's there's that tension, if you will, of treading lightly. And that's a balancing act that I can fall flat on my face oftentimes like that. And there's some where I can kind of tether it just a little longer than others. So it depends. It depends on the community, it depends on the circumstance. And that's why I tell folks, listen, when you do get that interview, please know they are not just interviewing you are interviewing them. Because
Absolutely.
success will be predicated on that. And so it's okay to be bold and brazen at times when you're in that interview seat, because if they don't know who you are and what your true value is, that you are there for this mission, then that's where the conflict is. And I'm guilty of that. I can tell you, I have been in positions where it's like, I'm just glad I can, I'm going to be able to pay my bills, right? So I need a job. So I get that. And so it's mum's the word for a bit, right? And you got to test things out and figure things out. But are you really true to yourself? No, you're not. So you're going to be miserable, but you're going to have a job. So it's like, what do you do? So we often have these conversations with folks that are getting ready to move into these positions and say, look, you got to know who you are. So then that way, when you do get that interview, you are not just doing it for yourself, but you're going to be in that place that you can open it up for others. I have heard people of our own like who will say, yeah, but my board is really, they're saying we can't just keep hiring Latinos. Or I'm getting kickback because, I hired too many African Americans.
And Dr. Armstrong, and I got to interject again because this is great. I thank you, because I've known and I've seen and experienced where there is a mandate or a goal to hire, retain African Americans or Black and Latino educators. And when you do that, the residual effect is you're hiring too many, and there's this reverse discrimination within your hiring practices. But the density is you want to just be able to increase the aggregate or the percentage of your Black and Latino leaders outside of paraeducators and custodial and cafeteria work. No, no, no. That has, yes, thank you, Dr. Armstrong, for bringing that up.
Yeah, it's one of those conversations, like you said, it's sticky icky, but the thing is, you've got to be able to have the reserve to be able to say, look, we can go ahead and keep our head buried in the sand, or we can address it. Put your head up and address it straight on. One of the things that we share with our folks is, as well, is when you read those job descriptions, they're intentional in how they write them, and some of them are there to discourage. Oftentimes, for our female leaders, we find a niche that we really soar in. We all do as humans, right? That's our talent. That's the thing that drives us, our passion. And many times it's in the curricular space versus the human resources or the financial space. And so if you read a job description and it says, you got to have this 3 years experience in finance, and if you don't, it's implied, go get it. I don't know where, but go get it. Right. And so it's this, it's this very structured way that you are weeded out. You either are weeded out or you feel you need to weed out yourself because you don't have the qualifiers. And so what we're doing as an organization is we are looking at the top when it comes to human resources, financials, curriculum. And we're getting ready to put out an entire series on hosting these webinars and in-person sessions for folks that want to really beef up their confidence and their knowledge base to be able to walk in that space and say, you know what, I may not have 3 years experience, but I'll tell you what I do have. And if they go into another position where they're able to gain that experience, they're going to go in there prepared. And so those are the kinds of things that, okay, if this is the gap that you're going to put from preventing us to get to what we need to get to, then let's close that gap. We got to offer these services to close that gap and make our people feel confident and prepared.
Very intentional, pragmatic, but the outcomes of this is just going to be absolutely amazing. And Dr. Armstrong, thank you for being that executive leader that is putting out questions, or I should say, really highlighting questions that we need to be able to have conversations about courageously and boldly, but with the intent of we have to be able to strategically change a system that is not designed for the marginalized, right? And what you're doing and this national work is so important. So thank you. Another question, right? And I would love to hear your answer with this, because there are multiple and various definitions and interpretation of innovation, excellence, and equity in education, right? You hear, about 10 different definitions of each of these individual words. It's kind of like when we go back to the context of academic rigor, right? Rigor, you had about 30 definitions of it. And I know, Dr. Armstrong, when you were a superintendent, you had to make sure everybody had that one shared mental model of we're going to define rigor this way, right? But, I think we kind of lost that in education in the context of equity, right? What does excellence truly look like in the AC stage of education? And how do we bring innovation into the education ecosystem and sector? But, you've seen every aspect of education, right? Every aspect in totality, even from the board role, board relations with the superintendent and all of that. But these national trends that we're seeing a lot of, we're seeing this precipitous regression in areas of outcomes that we care about. And it's happening at this exponential rate where we have to intervene, and we have to, I like to say, now is prevention and intervention simultaneously. It's this polarity between the two. But we're exhausted. Dr. Armstrong, you're exhausted. Because you're exhausted, right? Our leaders are exhausted. Our teachers are exhausted. The system is exhausted. And, rightfully so. This is, from the pandemic, We're seeing, a lot of teachers not coming back into the education field. We're seeing a high number of superintendents leaving the field. I mean, I heard a metric the other day. Massachusetts has 29 openings. Massachusetts is not a big state. I would expect 29 openings in Texas because of the size and the density, but 29 districts in Massachusetts. Wow. Dr. Armstrong, please, and you've been talking about this before the pandemic, right? What are strategies that you can provide my audience regarding self-care, right? What is personal, and whether it be your personal quandaries or professional quandaries that you're facing in your life, how do I heal and keep moving forward when there's an increased urgency in education?
Well, you talk about this parallel form of being, the intervention and prevention at the same time. And I look at it as, the reason why everybody's tired is because it's triage. And,
Amen. Amen. Call what it is, sis. I had to, politically correctly, frame the question, but call what it is, sis.
And the reason I think people are, everybody, why people are tired because we're still doing the same thing, just more of it. And so, it goes back to that crazy notion of we're doing more of it with less resources. I'm talking about the human resource, the human spirit, that with less resources, and we're expecting yet different outcomes, and we're calling these tinkerings innovative.
Right.
And it's like innovation. I can't think about being creative right now when I am in triage, and I'm made, tie it over here to get by, with a Band-Aid today, but tomorrow that's not going to work. And so I think, one of the things that I've found, and this is where, we talked about partnerships a minute ago. I love partnerships outside of education. My first career was not in education. I worked in the biotech industry for 11 years before going into education. And what I saw, the significant difference between private industry and education, is the fact that if you don't have a R&D or research and development department in your organization or business, you are not going to be able to adapt, so you die. Mm-hmm. And so I used to think about, why is it that we say professional development, but we don't go into the research and the development phases in education with intentionality about how it's going to impact our kids, how it's going to impact our teachers. Because, I know folks are tired of hearing, well, we can't do SEL. We can't even say SEL in this state. Social emotional learning, what? That's the fluff stuff. And the reality is, I don't care what industry you're in. And I would hope that, the January 6th incident that took place, even in a place that we would never see or think to it happen, that there are still people walking those halls that don't look over their shoulder or look around the corner a little differently.
Correct.
The emotional toil that our staff, our kids, our communities have had to endure, not just from the pandemic. I mean, there are many people who are just saying, why are we even saying COVID anymore? So they're being able to turn a page on that, when in fact, there are other ills that we are not dealing with. Gun violence. I mean, one of my own board members is dealing with that today because of yesterday. We are dealing with these things so often that we're having our kids say that it's like, what do they do? Do we take to the street? What is that going to do? The issues of self-care stem so far that you can't give what you don't have, right? Just like you can't teach what you don't know. And so it's so important that when I do talk to folks, and I feel very, very blessed that people feel comfortable in being able to say, can I have a confidential moment with you? And absolutely. And to be able to say, I know what that's like when you need that, when you've had a child who is laying literally across the way with a gunshot inflicted wound, and you are grasping of my human emotion that I can't share or show because I'm a leader. When in fact, those are the things that we have to really be able to say, that's unhealthy. To hold that in will cause inner harm. That is self-inflicting as well. So we have to create an environment to teach our kids, to teach our staff that it is not a sign of weakness if you weep, if you show care and anger and remorse and all of that, because it's not the hate that we want to spew out there.
Absolutely.
People are doing things because they're hurting. And if you're hurting, it's because we're not taking care of each other. And you can't take care of each other if you don't take care of yourself.
Yes. Preach, sister. Preach, 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 preach. I'm not even going to respond to that answer because I don't want to mess it up, Dr. Armstrong. I don't want to. I mean, that was perfectly stated. You had me mesmerized. Like, okay, keep going, keep going. Then I'm like, okay, but it's so true. You cannot help anybody else if you can't help yourself, right? And somebody told me, the other day, is that, Michael, you pour so much in other people's cups. Why don't you pour a little bit in your cup? And I'm like, you know what? You're absolutely right. They're like, it's okay to be a little bit of selfish so you can be able to be healthy, to be able to carry this work on for other people. And that's just well stated, Dr. Armstrong. And the last question, and I know this is going to be tough for you because you and I, we like to talk. But this question, right, I put it like this, right? And I always put it in education context is that, I add structures in, but obviously we as educators, we go beyond the structure. So I've been saying this lately, take this question how it is, all right? But
okay,
what 3 words? You're only limited to 3 words. That's why people break the rules egregiously, right? But what 3 words do you want today's audience to leave our podcast with regarding equity, excellence, social inclusion, and self-care in order for us to reach this nirvana or this vision of all? If I'm a new or veteran leader, what are those 3 words do I need for my internal and personal success? Not metrics of comparing success with other people, but my internal success as it's defined by me.
Ooh, 3 words. Action matters more.
Wow. Oh, you're playing the rules. I was waiting for you to go on and allow, but you listen. Thank you. This is a first on BFE. We had a leader follow the rules, and look, I was waiting for the rules to be broken, and we had that awkward silence. I'm like, wait, somebody actually going to listen to this? But action matters more. And that's a mic drop for Dr. Armstrong, because you know why? All of the nuggets that she provided to you before has been absolutely amazing. And Dr. Armstrong, thank you for being a guest on Voices for Excellence. So if my audience want to reach out to you, Dr. Armstrong, or if they want to be able to join Alash, and please, to my audience, it is a top-notch organization with a top-notch leader that you just heard from. That's the type of leadership you're going to get. You're going to get that intentionality, you're going to get that boldness, and you're going to get the unapologetic conversations to really change, to drive change. If you are a change agent, or if I'm a change agent, how would I get in contact with you, Dr. Armstrong?
alasedu.org. ALASEDU.org.
Thank you, Dr. Armstrong. And I am sure I will have multiple of my audience members reach out to you, because please, if you're not supporting ALAS now, please support ALAS. You can see the intentionality of the collaboration, how they're actually reaching out to NAPSI. NAPSI, I know that, is under the leadership of Dr. Atiba, is doing some really good things. And you see that collaboration going on. We know that 50% of Generation Alpha, Generation Z in public education are going to be Black and brown. So we're coming, right? So we have to be able to ensure that we're changing that standardized system. So my hermana, my sister, thank you so much. Dr. Armstrong, you have been great. This is going to be amazing. So to my audience, onward and upward, everybody. Have a great day.